You know what other great Americans love Paris? Benjamin Franklin. A lot of others too. Oh yeah, it means it's Vlogaday 575, 582. It's Vlogaday something.
Morning. It's Sunday, and I still have to edit my vlog from yesterday, which is one of my least favorite ways to start any day. So I'm gonna do that. I was debating waking up for starters, because I just wanted to sleep. But I got up. It's amazing how hard it is to get up some days. Got up, debated going to the Peloton, because I figured I'd get coffee and work there, but I probably would end up being a little bit too social. On a Sunday, there's gonna be a lot of people coming through that I know, so I figured I should probably stay here. I don't wanna stay here, but I should probably stay here, edit, and then we'll be good to go. I do have, so it'll only be a couple hours late. Most of you won't even notice. I had a brunch lined up at 11 with a friend, and then she stayed out super late apparently, and didn't want to get up early, or possibly ever. So we're gonna meet in like 2 o'clock or something instead. Gives me a little bit of time to get this done. So I'm not feeling too much pressure right now, except for the fact that I just want it over with, because I could be doing so many things instead of doing this in the morning. But it was good to get a good night's sleep. That's also really important. Taking care of yourself is always important. So let's grab a coffee and then we'll sit down and get to work. Quick insert, because I'm not used to this whole Mercy Ships Monday thing. Today's Mercy Ships Monday, and we're gonna talk about the process of joining Mercy Ships and Appelsbosch in South Africa, because that was my first experience on the continent of Africa, which is a huge place. And believe it or not, your maps, by and large, if you come from the Western world like I do not accurately represent just how big the continent of Africa is. Anyways, with that said, back to whatever it is we were just doing. Ciao, à la prochaine. Right out here. Wow. Okay, now I'm ready. Let's do this. All right, vlog up. Joining Mercy Ships, if you're ever thinking about doing it, is worth it, but generally a pain in the butt. As far as I've heard from my friends who have gone back, some of whom have literally lived there their entire lives, the application process can be a taxing process. Don't let it discourage you. And I'll tell you my story and you can judge from that. And my story is not particularly unique either. There are a lot of really funny stories about it actually, but I'll try to keep it to like the less ridiculous ones for today. I think I mentioned this a couple weeks ago, but when I originally applied to join Mercy Ships, I applied to be their videographer and got denied or rejected or whatever. They're like, nah, we don't need you. We don't think you're good enough to be our videographer, but we would like you to be our audiovisual technician, which was a job that I would end up hating. I really did not like that job. And the irony was, once I got to the ship, they still needed a videographer months later. This is like 6-8 months later. They still needed a videographer, and the marketing department on board was like, hey, would you like to be our videographer? And I was like, no, because I'd actually already seen, I didn't want to be a part of what was going on at the moment in that department. So it worked out sort of that I dodged one bullet, but I got hit by another one, which was being the audiovisual technician. Not my dream job by any means. My buddy Johan, who might be watching this right now, he took that job over from me and was amazing at it. It's just not good for my personality. But there are a lot of stories like that. Like we were short on biomedical technicians for a while, and I remember there was a woman who ended up working in the galley or in the dining room, and she had like a doctorate in biomechanics. And when they figured that out, they worked to try and get her switched, to a different department. But there's just a disconnect traditionally between the people that are doing the recruiting side of things and what actually happens on board the ship. So, just be aware of that if you're going into it, but it leads to some really hilarious stories, if nothing else. There's no shortage of entertainment on board that ship. But the process of joining then involved going to Texas. I went to Texas for a brief. You had to do like this brief introductory week where you went, you sat, you learned about the organization, what they were doing, what you would be doing. I did that in, I think, May with my parents, who then, they stayed and did the full training. And I went home and did more fundraising before coming back and doing my full training in the fall, which was actually the first round that my parents did, because my parents' job was to do the training for long-term staff. The training then for long-term staff was like a couple of weeks of like cultural awareness training, getting you ready to live in a metal box with people from 35 different countries on average, that kind of stuff, as well as there was a week of, my favorite week was called BST,
basic safety training where you actually did firefighter training, at sea survival skills. You know, you got to wear like the Gumby suits, the really big survival suits, and jump in a pool and try to swim around and find each other and then get into a raft, and oh, it was great. Had to learn how to flip life rafts over. That stuff was amazing. I loved it. Put out fires. It was great. Love to do more of that stuff. The classroom training was pretty rough on that, but the practical stuff was great. There's a Marks and Spencer here in La Défense. These things are popping up everywhere. I'm gonna have to come check. This one's tiny, but oh no, it goes back there. I'm gonna have to check this one out. But later. Ooh, fruit. I'm at the Grand Arche de la Défense, which, in case you're curious, is this massive 80s version. I don't actually remember when it was constructed. I need to look that up, but it's a ridiculously modern version of the Grand Arche de la Défense, which is directly in line with the Arc de Triomphe, which is the famous one over, you know, straight that way actually. I'm pretty sure that that one could fit inside this one. And apparently, I just saw elevators. You can go up inside it, which I didn't know before. Anyways, I'm meeting somebody here. Go for a walk, grab a smoothie or something, I don't know, and just enjoy the sunshine for a little bit. So when I joined Mercy Ships, I think it might be a little bit different now, but they had, like I said, those 3 weeks of training, I think, in Texas, and then you had a week-long field service. We actually went somewhere and did some work, kind of somewhere up country, somewhere challenging. Ours was in Haiti, and this was like about a year after the earthquake. It was not in good shape at that point still. So we spent a week, 10 days, 2 weeks, helping at an organization that basically did a whole bunch of different things, from education. They did a lot of education, to prosthetics for people that had lost limbs in the earthquake and after that. And so it was really, really interesting place to be. We helped them. I actually got to drive their ambulance at one point, which was exciting. And then after that experience, went back to the States for a little bit, did a little bit more fundraising, and then went to South Africa and jumped straight in, like I said, at Appelsbosch, which was a really interesting place. And it was a good time to actually meet other long-termers because there were no short-termers around, it was just long-termers. So it was a really good time to join the ship just because they were bored out of their minds, hadn't seen a new face in a couple of months, and were actually looking to meet people, which is rare because long-termers with Mercy Ships, as with any NGO that has long-term people welcoming short-term people, it gets hard for the short-term people to make friends with long-term people. I was long-term as well, but it was a good condensed moment to actually meet a lot of people all at once and yeah, get started with the organization. I always wondered if you could go up there, and I never did the research until today. 15 euros. Unless, of course, you qualify for a discount. Just have to travel via time capsule, apparently. I always thought this tent structure under here was pretty hideous, and that opinion hasn't changed. Definitely want to go up there one of these days. During the training process, I was really excited. I was really looking forward to getting to the ship. I really bought into what Mercy Ships was doing. I thought, man, this is a cool organization. I don't know, I was looking forward to the adventure of it. I was hoping to get to use my French, even knowing that I was going to end up going to Sierra Leone and not getting to use it right away. I was hoping to meet French speakers on the ship, not knowing there weren't a whole lot of French speakers that volunteered on the ship. Whole other story. I was excited. I mostly enjoyed the training. It was fairly boring at times. Met some cool people though. And Texas was quite the experience in and of itself as well. Sometimes I felt like I had more culture shock going to Texas than West Africa, but that's, you know, also a whole nother story. And Texas has some really fun stuff in it for sure. I don't know if you've ever been to Whataburger or had sweet tea. They have those things and I enjoyed those things. Moving to South Africa was quite the jump though too. It was a real change. It was a little bit overwhelming, but also just dramatic because we went from the middle of nowhere in Texas to the middle of nowhere in South Africa, just outside of Durban, in the KwaZulu-Natal, which has like this beautiful hilly country, crazy fog that would come in, and we were just like way out, basically in a tiny little village in an abandoned teaching college that had been shut down after apartheid came to a close. And it was quite the experience in and of itself. When I got to South Africa, I landed December 1st of 2010 and was picked up by my buddy Marty, who would become a really good friend of mine as time went on, as would the rest of his family. I love his kids, love his wife, love all of them. But he was the first person I met from Mercy Ships. He picked me up at a hotel just outside of Durban, drove me all the way to Appelsbosch, and we were just way the heck out. Appelsbosch was a fun experience because it was this abandoned college that they had cleaned out. The government just let them use it, and I showed up a couple months in, and like I said, people were really kind of bored of each other and stuck together. And Mercy Ships is one of those things where thousands of people come through all the time. So I think when we were in Sierra Leone, 1,600 volunteers came through in that one field service over the course of 10 months. There comes a point where if you're there for a long time, you just get used to seeing people say goodbye to people, and like you kind of put up a little bit of a wall. They'd been there long enough and bored enough that when I showed up, they're like, oh, new person. So I made friends pretty quickly, and it was a lot of fun. It was kind of out in the middle of, like I said, it was in the middle of nowhere, very green territory. But we didn't really do much. We were waiting for the new generators to be put in. We didn't have anything to do. So we're just kind of sitting around doing our jobs and trying not to go crazy, waiting for the ship to be finished, which, you know, wasn't a bad way to start, but I was definitely itching to get out of there by the time we did get out of there. One of the things that I love most about Appelsbosch, actually, there was a skeleton crew of people that had been hired to be the caretakers of the place. I mean, Mercy Ships staff were the ones that still did all the cooking, cleaning, everything. Like, we kind of ran the place, but there was a groundskeeper and a couple people that ran a little shop there, like a little convenience store. And they also cooked, and this was where I was actually introduced to the famous bacon and egg burger. I didn't know you could put an egg on a burger before this point in my life, and holy cow, was it amazing. Whenever I got like the hankering for something tasty that wasn't like whatever snacks we had on hand normally, bacon and egg burger, good memories on that front. And South Africa as a whole was really fun. I did about a couple weeks before we officially all moved back to the ship, I did manage to move back to the ship and spend a little bit more time in Durban, but we would take a lot of trips in on the weekends and so forth. I think it was about an hour-and-a-half drive to get in, and we weren't allowed to use the public transportation. There were, you know, big vans that would take people in and out, but they would wreck a couple times a week, and you would see them overturned in the ditch. There was a new wreck every few days. It was kind of dangerous. There was also a point where, I don't remember what the whole story of this was, but there was some political movement, like a union or something, going after the drivers of those things. And I think that's what officially actually did that in as a mode of transportation for Mercy Shippers, was one or two of those guys got shot like while they were working, and so I was like, yeah, you can't use those anymore. Not only do they overturn a few times a week, but now their drivers are getting shot. Not the best type of transportation to be taking. But lots of random stories from my time at Appelsbosch. Like when my buddy Jesse and I decided that we would set off fireworks for New Year's, climbed up into the hills above the compound, took a bunch of fireworks up with us, and Jesse thought for some reason, he was like, I'm gonna make a bottle rocket that's gonna go extra far because I'm gonna tape a bunch of them together and each bottle rocket will light off the next and it'll just keep going. Yeah, it just kind of overweighted it and almost hit me in the face. Number of stories like that. Playing ultimate frisbee in a giant field, finding random pot plants growing around the outside of the compound, all kinds of random stuff. But I remember for me, like one of the biggest things was I really wanted to actually get on the ship. You spend all this time hearing about the ship, getting ready to go, like there's this romantic idea of actually living on this hospital ship that gets lodged in your head, and that's where you really want to get, that's what you really want to see. Then you end up in this tiny little abandoned college out in the middle of nowhere, and it's, you know, just not what you signed up for. So when we finally moved on to the ship, I just remember seeing the ship for the first time. I think it was actually in dry dock, so it was completely out of the water. They'd cut holes in the side of it to get the generators out and put new ones in. And I just remember being like, oh, we're finally here. It was a really cool, like overwhelming moment of like, oh my gosh, it's so cool, it's so big, I can't wait. Going on board, the whole thing was kind of torn apart on the inside, and it was boiling hot because there was no air conditioning. So you're in the middle of summer in South Africa in the blazing sun. It was like over 100 degrees on board most of the time. My buddy Kyle, one of my best friends, he actually had like 3 fans that he'd set up in his room just to try and stay cool while he was sleeping. So he didn't really want to be living on board quite yet, but once they got the generators back up and running, the new ones, then it was better. Of course, they put the filtration units in wrong for the air conditioning, so that would turn into a problem in Sierra Leone. If I forget to tell you that story when we talk about Sierra Leone next week, please do remind me. But I was just so excited to actually get on board that ship. And then when they put us in the water and we sailed away and we actually sailed out and to Cape Town, it was pretty amazing. And sailing is one of my favorite things too, and I think we'll talk more about that next week as well. But I just loved being on the ocean, and I did really enjoy it. Like, it was exciting on the ship. It was stressful. We talked about this a couple days ago, and it was definitely one of those periods in my life where just everything was a little bit overwhelming. Everything was new. You're in a new part of the world, in the opposite hemisphere from the one you grew up in. And it's summer in December, you know, it's hot. You're living on a boat.
surrounded by all kinds of crazy people that you've never met before. And of course, jumping into the long-termer camp right away, they've all been around for a long time. They all know each other. They all know the ropes, and so you're just trying to figure it out as you go, doing a job that you kind of hate. And one that we'll talk more about that job when we get to Sierra Leone next week as well. But I just remember it being like both really, really fun and exciting and also overwhelming and stressful and like so much at the same time. So it was a good experience, definitely a good experience. Learned a lot, it grew a lot, and that was just the beginning of what would become madness. But other things about South Africa, of course, probably the best steak in the world and super cheap. Like the most expensive steak you're gonna get is gonna cost you the equivalent of $20, and it will be the best steak you have possibly ever. If you're ever in Cape Town, go to Lord Nelson's Eye. So good. And of course, the Royal Eatery Cafe for a good burger. Also really good. Their sauces are amazing. Cape Town is amazing. Those are Cape Town recommendations. In Durban, I don't remember, where's the place? There are a couple of places that we had in Durban that we would go to. Random spots. And Umhlanga Rocks is a really nice area that we would go to a lot as well. But between like Durban and Cape Town, that's where my experience in South Africa lies. Love it. I love South Africa. I've been back. I want to go back again. But yeah, gosh, I really do love South Africa. And there are a lot of really fun stories to tell coming up as well. I hope that those kind of whet your appetite a little bit. I'm gonna go for a run now because I need to go for a run, and then I need to get back to work here on some stuff that I need to send off for Insta Freebie this week. So hopefully, you know, like we get it all taken care of. Got it. 10K, and I kept it under 9 minutes. I averaged like an 8:40 pace, which is great. Which means I also got 4 runs in this week and 1 long run out of it, which accomplishes those goals, and I'm a little bit faster, which accomplishes that. I mean, I don't know if that's a goal so much as a hopeful result of running more. But either way, molto bene. Now I need to go, like, you know, shower, eat, and I actually have some stuff I wanted to get right. Work, blah. I melted butter in the pasta. After I finished cooking the pasta, put it in a bowl, melted butter with it, stirred it around. And then after I got done, put the big pork chop in the fridge, little pork chop left in there, dumped the pasta in, swished it around in like what was left of the oil and juices. Unfortunately, I didn't put quite enough oil in, so the bottom is a little bit burned right now, but that's all right. Still going to be delicious. I think that's that for tonight. If you enjoyed this, please do subscribe because I make one every day and you won't be left hanging, at least. And I would love to see you again tomorrow morning. Yeah, it's Monday tomorrow. The week begins.